Chapter 1401, The Doorkeepers. After more than half an hour, Zhang Yi's team, the monk soldiers led by the Undertaker, the Knights of the Round Table, and the Garuda tribe led by Gao Changkong appeared at the entrance to the corridor. Behind them, the corpses of the Three-Eyed Clan had long since piled up into a mountain. Most of them were soldiers of the Three-Eyed Clan, expelling these outsiders. However, the four generals had all been defeated, so how could they possibly be a match for some of the most powerful people in the surface world? The scene was somewhat tragic, with mountains of corpses and rivers of blood. From this perspective, Zhang Yi and the others all looked like ruthless invaders. But battles between different races, and between advanced civilizations at that, are about the plundering of living space. There is no such thing as justice. It is just the law of the jungle. Wolves eat sheep in order to survive, so how can that be considered cruel? There were significantly fewer people gathered here, and most of the soldiers they had brought with them had died on the battlefield. What was left were a considerable number of mutants of the captain level or above. Undertaker folded his hands and said to the crowd, "Everyone, I know the reason you are here. We are only here to completely resolve the source of the chaos that has threatened the snowy plateau for 1,000 years, and what you want is also here. In that case, let's join forces and go over there." Zhang Yi nodded without saying much. Having come this far, there was naturally no reason to turn back. Gao Changkong and Lancelot naturally meant the same thing. They set foot on the long, narrow stone bridge and walked towards the temple where the supreme royal authority of the Nash Kingdom was located. They had originally thought that they would definitely encounter obstacles from the Nash Kingdom's army along the way. However, they did not expect that, from beginning to end, not a single person stood in their way. Perhaps the people of the Nash Kingdom also understood that ordinary soldiers could no longer stop them at this point. Only Zhang Yi, as he walked along, suddenly had a strong feeling in the back of his mind that he was being watched. His intuition was extremely sharp, and it came from the passive ability of his time-based power. He looked up and saw the shrine, which was getting closer and closer and growing larger and larger in his eyes. He felt as if he had been fixedly stared at by an ancient and ferocious beast. "A dangerous aura," Zhang Yi said indifferently. Gao Changkong glanced at him from a distance. "What's wrong, Lao Zhang? Did you sense something?" Zhang Yi gave him a lukewarm look. "Gao, aren't you a bit too familiar? But, this place is indeed dangerous." He took a deep breath and thought to himself, "However, this feeling of danger is far worse than what he encountered below the Qinling Mountains. The Three-Eyed Clan exerts far less pressure on him than the White Dragon Clan." It was clear that these were two different civilizations, just as there were strong and weak countries among humans. Even the four generals he encountered before were all at the level of the Black Chariot, but they were not yet at a level that would make one feel completely hopeless and unable to fight back. Perhaps this time, he could use the Nash Kingdom to gain a thorough insight into the true nature of the underground races. Zhang Yi had a feeling that this time, he would gain a lot. Sacred substances like the source of God were secondary, the most important thing was to learn the truth of history. Everyone carefully approached the gates of the Holy Spirit Temple. From a distance, it had seemed magnificent, towering high above them all. Only when they got really close did they realize just how vast and majestic it was. They strained to look up, but even so, they could hardly see the top. Its head had sunk into the clouds, barely visible. The doors alone were hundreds of meters high. Even for the Three-Eyed Clan, these proportions are magnificent, but for humans, they are unimaginably huge. Zhang Yi led the others in silence, not at all intending to push the doors open. Still, among the Sangha temple monks, two burly Vajra guards walked over and gathered their strength to push the heavy doors open. Screech! The doors were pushed very slowly open, and a white light appeared in front of them. Everyone's eyes could not help but fall forward, and at the same time, everyone was ready for battle. But nothing happened as imagined. At the entrance was a long, white corridor. In the magnificent temple halls, the tower paved with half-meter-thick red carpets. On both sides stood white stone pillars, covered in exquisite patterns and beautiful to behold. "Be careful, there might be an ambush here," Deji reminded everyone. Zhang Yi was accompanied by Liang Yu, Uncle Yu, Fatty Su, and the others, all of whom were also armed and carefully surveying their surroundings. Zhang Yi's eyes were dazzling, and everything follows the trail, was constantly on the lookout for any danger that might come. Dozens of people entered the silent hall and slowly walked along the long corridor. However, not a single soldier from the Three-Eyed Clan appeared along the way, and it was deathly silent. Until they reached the end of the corridor and saw another huge set of doors. In front of the doors was a huge chair, on which sat a giant in silver armor. He was very burly, even by human standards, and wider and thicker-shouldered than Uncle Yu, a purely enhanced mutant. The armor is somewhat similar to that of a medieval European knight, but the helmet is a twisted bullhorn helmet, revealing only a pair of deep eyes. The rest of the face is pitch black due to the lighting, making it impossible to see clearly. But just from those eyes, the crowd present felt a tremendous sense of oppression. Zhang Yi subconsciously swallowed. The oppression this person brought him was even greater than the Senbamu he had previously faced, much greater. Not just him, but everyone else felt the same way. Is this the last guardian? Lancelot's eyes were grave, but a somewhat fanatical smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. No matter what, this one in front of them must be the enemy. Everyone was fully prepared for battle. Zhang Yi loaded the white eagle on his left hand, while his right hand, Holy Judgment, enveloped the void in black flames that could destroy everything. Gao Changkong held the golden sunwheel sword in his hand, and Lancelot had also reforged his sword of conquest, Conqueror, and was ready to lead the charge. The giant sat upright in his chair, and when he saw the humans who had come to invade, instead of picking up the axe that was placed next to his chair, he slowly raised his right hand and pointed at the people in front of him. What a bad time to come, this is really troublesome. But right now I don't have time to fix you, so let's just find a place to calm down, he said, and lightly snapped his fingers, and the space in front of everyone's eyes was distorted like a rag. Zhang Yi felt a familiar power, the power of the void instantly enveloping everyone present. Chapter 1402, Exile in the Void. The last of the 5 generals of the Nash Kingdom, Babu, activated his ability Exile in the Void, after Zhang Yi and the others arrived at the Holy Spirit Temple. Zhang Yi and the others had not yet recovered from the shock when the space in front of them warped. They felt like their bodies were out of control, and the next moment they appeared in different spaces. Zhang Yi didn't feel much, except that the scene in front of him had completely changed after a brief moment of distortion. He was standing on a white slab of stone as smooth as jade, surrounded by a lavish and enormous palace, which was just too empty compared to his size. Liang Yu and Fatty Su, who had been around him originally, were nowhere to be seen. This sudden ability, due to its lack of aggression, was not something Zhang Yi had anticipated. A space-transferring skill? Zhang Yi instantly understood what Babu had done to them. This came as a great surprise to him. He knew that there must be some kind of guardian in the Holy Spirit Temple. But he had expected a fierce battle after encountering the guardian, but he never expected the other party to place them in different places. Is this to defeat them one by one? Zhang Yi had such a guess, so he looked around with extra caution. The spiritual domain could sense fluctuations in the surrounding space, so he could sense most people's attacks. First, he greeted Liang Yu and the others on the communication channel to determine their location. Liang Yu, Uncle Yu, Fatty Su, can you hear me? Where are you now, together or apart? Zhang Yi asked cautiously. However, after a long time, he did not receive a response from the other party. The intelligence system gave him a reminder. Master, this place seems to have a unique magnetic field that can block the signals of communication devices. Zhang Yi's brows furrowed. This is really some trouble. The group was scattered by Babu. Zhang Yi was able to protect his own safety, but the same could not be said for the others. If Babu took this opportunity to attack Liang Yu and the others first, then basically all the mutants below Epsilon would be killed in seconds. Thinking about this, Zhang Yi was very worried about the safety of the others. At the moment, only Flower was by Zhang Yi's side, plus Spirit Guardian and the others attached to his shadow. Zhang Yi immediately wanted to use his ability to space shuffle to get out of here. Although the Holy Spirit Temple was huge, with his ability, he could quickly find the people who had gone missing in various places and gather them together. Swish! He quickly teleported to an open area in front of him. However, when he emerged from the dimensional gate, he was shocked to find a huge white wall blocking his way. Zhang Yi's pupils constricted. He hovered in midair, looking around in surprise. He could confirm that he was still in the same huge space, and had not left. It seemed that there was some kind of force preventing him from passing through the wall. Zhang Yi reached out his hand, somewhat unbelieving, and touched the wall in front of him. The moment his palm touched the wall, an indescribable sense of discomfort instantly enveloped his entire body. This feeling was somewhat familiar, similar to the feeling when he first touched the doors of eternity. But that sense of discomfort was even stronger, even carrying some bone-chilling chill. Zhang Yi unconsciously backed out dozens of meters. He stared fixedly at the huge space around him, and for a time, he was even a little confused. Nash Kingdom has a long history of researching the supernatural, so did they invent a material that can suppress supernatural powers? Zhang Yi whispered. In shadow space, Yang Xinxin said, the building materials of Nash Kingdom do indeed have more tenacious properties than those outside. In particular, the material on the meandering corridors can withstand an epsilon-level impact. This material is very interesting, I think we can study it. Lu Karen also looked forward to it and said, brother, if we can develop this material, it will definitely be of great use in the future. 2.5 years after the end of the world, mutants have always been the most powerful and special humanoid weapons in the world, and it is difficult to restrain them. But that is only because people have not thoroughly researched mutants. Obviously, over the long years, the Three-Eyed Clan has already come up with a way to deal with this. Upon hearing this, Zhang Yi, although anxious to find Liang Yu and the others, drew his holy judgment. This time, he did not use his supernatural powers, but simply used the power of the submarine dragon armor to slash out a fierce blow at the snow-white wall. Crack! The blow split the wall, and the falling material was collected by Zhang Yi in shadow space. Put it away for now, Karen. You have time to study it. But right now we're in a hurry and must find Uncle Yu and the others as soon as possible. Otherwise, their lives may be in danger. At this time, Yang Xinxin spoke up. Brother, there's no need to be so anxious about this. I think that if I were the mysterious guardian, I definitely wouldn't go after the weaker people first. Zhang Yi, who had been a little anxious, calmed down a little after hearing this. Xinxin, what does this mean? Yang Xinxin explained, concern leads to confusion. You think they are important because you care about them. But to the general of the Nash Kingdom, they are not important at all. What is important is you epsilon-level mutants. Even if his goal is to defeat you one by one, I don't think he will give you time to gather. Therefore, the best solution is to attack the epsilon-level mutants first. Therefore, brother, as long as you are not attacked, it can be proved that Mr. Liang and the others are safe. Zhang Yi's footsteps stopped in place. After Yang Xinxin's explanation, he had to admit in his heart that this was the most reasonable argument. Because if the situation were reversed, he would also choose to do the same to maximize his battlefield value. So, do we just have to wait here for him to come to us? Zhang Yi looked up and looked at the dome hundreds of meters high. This huge space seemed to be a room in a palace, but it was many times larger than any human building Zhang Yi had seen. It was surrounded by white space, and there was no end in sight. If there is no signal and we can't use the space shuffle, we'll just have to search for the others. Yang Xinxin thought quickly, then pointed ahead and said, Brother, go out the front doors, and from now on, whenever you come to a fork in the road, go right. Chapter 1403 Collectibles. The huge Holy Spirit Temple was so large that even the giants of the Three-Eyed Clan could easily get lost in it, let alone the tiny humans who were only a little over a meter tall. So to Zhang Yi at this time, this place was a giant maze. He and everyone else were looking for the right Tao and their companions. Yang Xinxin said to Zhang Yi, "If we judge by the maze, when we can't get any information, then just keep going in one direction, and sooner or later we'll find the exit." "Okay, let's do it your way." At this point, Zhang Yi had become very disoriented, and there was no better way, so he had to follow Yang Xinxin's advice and fly towards the front. Fortunately, within the area, Space Shuffle could still be used, but it was no longer possible to pass through walls made of this special material. Soon, he arrived at the end of this huge space in front of a magnificent white door. By Zhang Yi's own strength, it was surprisingly difficult to open the door. At this time, Flora let out a loud yell, transformed into a huge Biao incarnation, bit the door handle to help Zhang Yi, and opened a large door to the left and right. "Yes, that's it, let's keep going." Zhang Yi led Flora directly towards the next set of doors. Soon, they had passed through 5 rooms. Only then did he slowly begin to sense the environment of the palace. Some rooms were very empty, probably corridors, while others had huge tables and tall decorations along the walls. But suddenly, a strange fluctuation emanated from a certain point in the Holy Spirit Temple, and then spread throughout the entire Holy Spirit Temple. The team members, including Zhang Yi, the Undertaker, Lancelot, and even Gao Changkong, who were looking for a way out, all felt this strong fluctuation at the same time. No mutant could resist this power. It was like an attraction from the depths of their souls, inducing them to go over and get a taste of it. The source of God. Zhang Yi was familiar with this kind of aura. The Holy Spirit Temple had the aura of the source of God. Zhang Yi's eyes narrowed in an instant. Is this the treasure in the Holy Spirit Temple? No, it can't be that simple. The source of God is only a subpar product with a key function, compared to the spirit of sacrifice, and this can be clearly known just by touching the 2 substances. Back in the Demon Kingdom, they had found the source of God in the 9-story Demon Tower. But the palace of the mighty Nash Kingdom could not possibly treasure this object. But why did its aura suddenly appear? Zhang Yi muttered to himself, could it be that someone else found the source of God and opened the vault where it was sealed, causing the aura to leak? This possibility was very high. After all, wasn't everyone's goal here to obtain the treasure? If everyone was exiled to different parts of the Holy Spirit Temple, naturally some lucky people might be in locations near the treasure vault. Yang Xinxin, however, gave a different opinion. This is very strange. The source of God is a rare treasure, and when the other party exiled us, they must have been careful to avoid the area where the source of God was located. It can even be said that they would never give us the opportunity to come into contact with the source of God. Even if someone did find it, they would have sealed it at the first opportunity, rather than making such a big deal about releasing its aura. Zhang Yi also had some doubts about this. He asked, "Xinxin, what do you think?" Xinxin said, "It could be a trap. It's deliberately attracting you over there." Having said that, she muttered to herself, "That's very strange. Obviously, at the beginning, the Guardian deliberately separated you. This is obviously illogical. Unless..." Zhang Yi asked curiously, "Unless what?" Yang Xinxin said, "Unless his goal is to waste your time and even make you fight each other." Zhang Yi frowned. "I can't get any information about the Holy Spirit Temple right now, so I can only act based on the limited information I have. No matter what the other party's intentions are, we should first go and take a look in the direction of the source of God's breath. Even if there really is some danger, his abilities can keep him alive. Besides, since they have decided to come underground, they can't do everything without taking any risks." Yang Xinxin pondered for a moment before agreeing with Zhang Yi. "That's fine. If we can sense the source of God's aura, then of course other people can sense it too. Then we can use this as a medium to gather together. Zhang Yi had already rushed towards the source of the energy fluctuations with Flora. After passing through a few more rooms, they suddenly saw a door that had been opened a crack. Zhang Yi's gaze immediately tightened. It seems that someone has arrived before us. He and Flora stopped outside the doors. Zhang Yi took a deep breath to prepare his body for action. Then, with his left hand holding his pistol and his right hand holding his sword, he followed Flora, who had grown large, and walked step by step into the doors. After entering the doors, he did indeed see the figure of an acquaintance. A monk in a scarlet robe, with long hair streaming down his back and bare feet walking on a jade-white, smooth floor. Who else could it be if not the Undertaker? Seeing that it was him, Zhang Yi stood still and did not rush forward. Meeting the Undertaker in this place was undoubtedly the most dangerous. The Undertaker not only had a combat power of 20,000 points, which was equivalent to the level of the Black Chariot, but more importantly, he could receive the power of the Tantric faith from the Sangha temple on the surface. Unless he could defeat him in a single blow, the power of the faith would continuously strengthen his body, leaving him in a state of near immortality. It is really difficult to be an enemy when facing such an opponent. In front of the Undertaker, Deji and other Sangha temple monks were mesmerized and staring in awe at a high platform. On top of that platform was a transparent crystal box containing a yellow crystal that emitted a soft and mesmerizing light. Zhang Yi was familiar with this object. It was none other than the source of God. The people of the Nash Kingdom actually put such an important thing here? Zhang Yi was a little confused. He looked around. In addition to the high platform where the source of God was placed, there were many other similar platforms displaying all kinds of objects. There were fossils of some unusual creatures, and there were also some ancient weapons and armors. This place turned out to be a showroom displaying the royal family's collection. Zhang Yi suddenly realized. The source of God is just a collection of items to them? This discovery left Zhang Yi speechless. Don't the Three-Eyed Clan know that this kind of thing can shape a Epsilon-level strong person? Chapter 1404, Illusionary Dream. Zhang Yi and Flower's arrival also attracted the attention of the Undertaker and Deji and the others. Deji was about to collect the source of God, but when he saw Zhang Yi, he immediately became cautious. Lord Chaos, you're a little late. We found the source of God first. Zhang Yi said indifferently, not late at all. Behind him, a huge shadow stood up like a person, and then turned into a pair of doors. From between the doors, Zhangde led the mutants of the Paji family and appeared in the palace. They stared fixedly at the source of God on the display stand in front of them, their weapons pointed unceremoniously at Deji and the others. Although they had now arrived in the Nash Kingdom, they needed to face the threat of the Three-Eyed Clan. But no one had forgotten that the Paji family and the Yashilangtai family had an inherent hatred for each other. Naturally, Zhangde and the others could not stand by and watch as Deji and the others took such a sacred object. Deji's face immediately fell, and he wanted to be the first to go and seize it. Zhang Yang waved the white eagle in his hand. I advise you not to act rashly. Feeling a terrifying aura of death envelop his body, Deji's movements immediately froze in place. Zhang Yi sneered, Here, when did it become your place to make decisions? His meaning was clear. Among the people here, only he and the Undertaker were qualified to decide the fate of the source of God. The Undertaker looked at Zhang Yi with a calm gaze. His eyes were as deep and distant as the mountains and seas, as if containing an endless world. He slowly raised his hand and gave a bow as if Buddha was picking a flower. Lord Chaos, now is not the time for us to fight among ourselves. You have already gained a lot of benefits, so shouldn't you let Sangha Temple have it? Zhang Yi said indifferently, I have to do what I'm told. Since I've seen this thing, it's meant for me. According to your Buddhist doors, you should help me fulfill my wish and let me have it. What, now even Buddhist monks aren't pure in their 6 roots? When they encountered the Three-Eyed Clan, they could join forces against a common enemy. But they weren't on friendly terms with each other. The Pachi family had entrusted him with the task of preventing the Sangha temple from gaining even more power under the demon abyss. Of course, an even more important point was that Zhang Yi really wanted the source of God. He had many geniuses under his command. Whether it was Lu Karen, Lian Yu, or Yang Xinxin, they were all first-class geniuses. The upper limit of their supernatural talent was stuck at the Delta level. But Zhang Yi understood that if he could help them break through to the Epsilon realm as well, their strength would experience a huge explosion. In the future, Zhang Yi would need them to become his right and left arms. Instead of the current situation, where Zhang Yi is actually the one dragging the entire team forward. Only Yang Xinxin, Zhou Qi, Yang Xia, and Lu Karen, with their high intelligence and powerful support, can truly help on the battlefield. The Undertaker let out a soft sigh. "Patron, you are fixated on appearances," he said, looking at Zhang Yi with compassion in his eyes, but there was an indescribable meaning in them. Just that look made people feel like they were sinking in it the moment they looked at it. Zhang Yi frowned and was about to say something when the next moment, he suddenly opened his eyes wide and looked up, but saw only a white ceiling. Huh! The scene in front of him was somewhat familiar, but in his mind, it seemed like he hadn't seen it for a long time. At this moment, Zhang Yi felt the soft warmth beneath him, and he should be lying down. It took about 5 seconds before he remembered where he was. What he saw was clearly the ceiling of his own home. Yes, his home, his 3-bedroom apartment on the 24th floor of Yuelu community in the Xishan district of Tianhai City. Zhang Yi sat up from the bed a little dazed. He had just woken up and his head was a little groggy. There seemed to be a lot of complex and wonderful memories in his mind, but after waking up, they were quickly forgotten. There are still some residual imprints, but after waking up from a dream, people generally forget most of what they dreamed. Zhang Yi squinted as he felt a warm sensation next to him. The sunlight outside the window was warm and gently shone on his bed. Huh? Am I awake? Or asleep? That's not right, I thought the world had ended already. Am I dreaming? Zhang Yi rubbed his face hard, but when he opened his eyes, he was still in his nicely decorated home. He sat up in bed and walked in his slippers to the window. The black aluminium window, illuminated by the sun, felt warm to the touch. Although he cleaned every day, there was still a thin layer of dust, which, when brushed off with his finger, left an imprint on the palm of his index finger. Zhang Yi looked out the window. The sunlight made him squint slightly, and everything felt so real. He suddenly couldn't tell which was reality, this moment or his memory of the end of the world. Zhang Yi pinched his thigh hard, and soon he gasped in relief with gritted teeth. Damn, that really hurt. Could it be that I was really dreaming just now? For some reason, his heart suddenly sank into a great sense of loss. Because the remnants of the dream seemed to contain many wonderful experiences and many people who had accompanied him through the long years. Zhang Yi was confused for a moment. He walked over to the sofa in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows and lay down helplessly. He closed his eyes and tried to go back to sleep. It seemed that after waking up, everything he saw would become real. No matter if this place was a dream, or if everything he had seen before was a dream. It was always easy to fall asleep after a nap. When he woke up again, it was already past 10 a.m. He was woken up by the alarm on his phone. Zhang Yi took the phone from the bedside table. The familiar feel was still his newly purchased Huawei Mate 600 Pro. The caller ID showed that the person calling was his girlfriend Fan Yuqing. Zhang Yi quickly answered the phone. He and Fan Yuqing had confirmed their relationship 6 months ago, and their relationship had always been very good. They planned to get married around the National Day holiday next year. Hello, Yuqing. A soft, pleasant female voice came from the other end of the line, with a hint of exasperation, saying, I've been calling you for ages, why did you only answer now? Weren't you at home? Zhang Yi hurriedly said, I was at home. Then why didn't anyone answer the door when I rang the bell? Zhang Yi rubbed his aching temples. Oh, just a moment, I'll be right there to open the door. Zhang Yi slipped off his slippers and hurried to the entrance to open the door. The doors opened, and outside was an exquisite girl wearing a white dress, Gucci shoes, and a Chanel bag. It was Zhang Yi's girlfriend Fan Yuqing. Behind her was her best friend Lin Keining. Although her appearance was not as good as Fan Yuqing's, she had always had a good personality. Because Fan Yuqing and Zhang Yi knew each other, she had always been a friend of Zhang Yi's. Chapter 1405, Dreams and Reality. The two of them carried a lot of ingredients, and they grumbled as they took off their shoes and walked into the house. We said we were coming over for hot pot on the weekend, but you were really able to sleep, just like a pig. You couldn't be woken up no matter what we called you. Zhang Yi had to smile and say that he overslept. The two girls didn't care about him, and the two of them carried the ingredients into the kitchen, grumbling as they started washing the vegetables. Zhang Yi sat on the sofa in the living room. Fan Yuqing never let him cook on a normal day. Fan Yuqing once said that it would be laughable for a man to go into the kitchen every day. Zhang Yi looked at the kitchen behind him. Fan Yuqing and Lin Keining, who had already put on their aprons and were washing vegetables, suddenly made him feel that such days were extraordinarily beautiful. A strong sense of happiness enveloped him. He just didn't know why this happiness felt a little bit unreal, like the sunlight shining through the window in front of him, blurry and misty, as if it were veiled in a veil, hiding the truth from him. He once again thought of that dream. The things in the dream were quickly being forgotten, including the faces of the people in the dream, which were slowly becoming blurry. After a while, Lin Keining came into the living room with a family hot pot, skillfully plugged it in, and then arranged the various cleaned ingredients on the table. Hot pot is a popular way of cooking in China because it is very simple and can be made into a hearty meal very easily. Zhang Yi ate the familiar hot pot, and the two girls' happy smiles while chatting were like silver bells. However, Zhang Yi was always a little distracted and could not forget that dream. Seeing this, Fan Yuqing pouted in displeasure. Zhang Yi, what's wrong with you today? Are you sick? You've been distracted. Zhang Yi looked up and quickly said, No, I just... He paused for a moment and said slowly, I just had a very strange dream. A very strange dream? How strange? Lin Keining asked curiously. Fan Yuqing rolled her eyes. You really are something, having a dream can drive someone crazy. Zhang Yi hesitated for a moment and said, The dream I had was very long, as if several years had passed. In the dream, I met many people and experienced many things. It was so real that it was as if I had really lived in that world. Lin Keining bit her chopsticks and said, Most of us have experienced this feeling. Waking up from a dream, suddenly unable to tell where reality ends and the dream begins. In this case, just wash your face and it will pass in a while. Fan Yuqing laughed. It's just like the story of Zhuangzhou dreaming of a butterfly, isn't it? She turned her head to look at Zhang Yi, her big eyes full of curious glances. Was I in your dream? What did I look like? Tell me about it. Zhang Yi's eyes rolled up, and he thought about it. But soon, his heart gave a little thump. Because Fan Yuqing in the dream. Forget it, it's better not to mention it, and saying it out loud is sure to cause trouble. Of course you're very good. We're very much in love, and after we get married, we'll live together. As he spoke, Zhang Yi couldn't help but recall the content of the dream. I dreamed that the world was ending. The whole world was covered in a never-ending snowstorm, and many people froze to death. We were all struggling to survive in order to live. Lin Keining said excitedly, The end of the world? That's interesting, I often see these things when I watch short videos. Tell me, what were the details? Girls are always especially curious, and they are also particularly keen to pry into the secrets of others' hearts. Zhang Yi only felt that his memory was particularly vague, and he could only give a general account. It was just that the content that followed was not suitable to be spoken out loud. So he briefly described the other girls in his dream to Fan Yuqing and Lin Keining. After listening, the two girls laughed. They thought the dream was really interesting, and if they could write it down, it would probably make a very interesting novel. Zhang Yi just laughed too, lowered his head and continued eating, trying hard to put the whole thing behind him. It was just a dream, there was no need to take it too seriously. After lunch, Zhang Yi and the others cleaned up the garbage and prepared to go to the cinema in the afternoon to watch a newly released movie. The elevator stopped on the 18th floor, the doors opened, and a long-haired woman wearing a black turtleneck sweater and black framed glasses walked in. Although she was dressed very conservatively, it could in no way hide her perfect figure. The moment he saw her, Zhang Yi's heartbeat accelerated significantly. This woman was also in his dreams. Her name was Zhou Qi, and she was the attending physician at the Tianhai City First People's Hospital. In his dreams, she was his woman. Zhang Yi's throat moved slightly, and he wanted to say something, but in the end he kept his mouth shut. How could he take things seriously that happened in his dreams? After they went downstairs, Zhou Qi walked quickly out the door, while he accompanied Fan Yuqing and Yang Xia to take out the trash. Outside the apartment building, he saw Auntie Lin from the neighborhood committee wearing a red armband, scolding a young couple for letting their dog off the leash. Not far away, Uncle Yu, the security guard, was smiling as he watched some old men play chess in the fitness area. On the basketball court, Chen Zhenghao, a young man in a basketball uniform with two Flora arms, was playing 3-on-3 against Su Hao and other residents of the community. Everything in the dream seemed like a fantasy at this moment. Zhang Yi walked on blankly, feeling only a growing disconnect between dream and reality. His reason told him that this was the real world, but there was always a feeling, a strong emotion, that wanted to pull him to the world covered in snow. Zhang Yi could hear Fan Yuqing and Lin Keining laughing, but he didn't hear a word. He just walked numbly to the rubbish dump, pressed the button, and threw the rubbish bag into the rubbish bin. Zhang Yi, what's wrong with you? Fan Yuqing came over, stood on tiptoe, reached out and touched Zhang Yi's forehead, then touched her own. Huh? No fever? But you've been distracted today. Zhang Yi froze for a moment, then laughed. I was thinking about the dream I had last night. It was so real, it made me feel. It always felt like it wasn't a dream. And now, everything is so beautiful that it feels like a dream. Zhang Yi was startled by this sudden thought. But isn't everything in front of him just as beautiful as a dream? He has a 140 square meter 3-bedroom apartment in Tianhai City, a BBA car worth 200,000 to 300,000 yuan, and a sweet and lovely girlfriend who is about to get married. Life here is happy and warm. But the world in his dream is cold and cruel. But why does he keep immersing himself in the world of his dreams and can't extricate himself?